It's my journey, it's your journey. You need my help and I need yours. 'Cause we are...
Hello, family. Welcome to Journeys of Faith Super Saints podcast. Brother Joseph Fry Aldenhoven here at your service. Be sure to look at the description for special information of interest to you. And also, there's more to this blog article. Saint John Damascene, defender of icons and champion of incarnational worship. In the shadowed halls of Christendom's earliest centuries, when mighty empires clashed and heresies threatened the very foundations of our faith, a singular voice rose above the din, a voice that would echo through the ages for all who cherish the tangible beauty of our Catholic spiritual heritage. That voice belonged to Saint John Damascene, known as the steadfast defender of icons and a luminous champion of incarnational worship. His fearless testimony helped safeguard the truths that we hold dear, touching not just theologians and clergy, but countless faithful who draw strength and inspiration from the living witness of the saints. At Journeys of Faith, we honor torchbearers like Saint John Damascene, recognizing how powerfully their teachings ripple into our own pilgrimage of faith. Born into a world of political upheaval and religious persecution, John's unwavering love for the Church and the Eucharist became a beacon, guiding the faithful through turbulent storms. He stood resilient against iconoclasts, those who sought to strip Christian worship of its sacred images and incarnational intimacy. St. John understood that to venerate an icon is not idolatry, but an act of faith, rooted deeply in the mystery of the Incarnation, where God took on flesh and dwelt among us. As Catholic evangelizers, inheritors of a tradition rich with Eucharistic miracles and the radiant examples of the saints, we are called to the same courage and clarity. Through the lens of Saint John Damascene's life and legacy, let us journey together, one heart, one mind, one spirit, with one vision, to rediscover the profound beauty of our faith and the essential role that holy images play in drawing us ever closer to Christ. Early life in multicultural Damascus, Saint John Damascene's early years unfolded along the sun-soaked avenues and echoing bazaars of Damascus, a crossroads where east met west. Born around the year 675 AD into a prominent Christian family, likely of noble or civil servant status, John experienced the city not only as a melting pot of languages and faiths, but also as a stage for negotiation between Christian, Jewish, and Muslim communities. His father, trusted by Muslim rulers for his expertise and loyalty, ensured that John received a comprehensive education that blended Hellenistic philosophy, sacred scripture, and the best scientific thought of the era. Damascus was more than a backdrop. It was the crucible in which John's character was tempered. He absorbed the richness of Greek philosophy and the rigors of Christian doctrine while daily witnessing the dynamic devotion of Jews and Muslims. This tapestry of belief shaped John's deep reverence for the Incarnation, God made manifest and visible in the world, as well as his understanding that true worship draws together the senses and the intellect. In this environment of shared scholarship and theological debate, young John learned to navigate both difference and commonality. He developed a keen sensitivity to the power of words and images, skills that would later become vital in his daring defense of icons in Christian worship. Surrounded by clergy, scholars, merchants, and pilgrims thronging the city's thoroughfares, he quietly internalized a sense of mission, preparing, as if by divine providence, for his eventual role as one of the church's greatest theologians. Take the next step in your faith journey with Journeys of Faith. Saint John Damascene's legacy lives on in every Catholic heart that seeks the truth, beauty, and goodness of our holy traditions. At Journeys of Faith, we invite you to step deeper into the powerful witness of saints like Saint John Damascene, a defender of icons and a champion of incarnational worship. Let his example inspire your daily walk with Christ and strengthen your devotion to the Eucharist and the treasures of our faith. Consider how you can make Saint John Damascene a companion in your own spiritual path. Explore our virtual pilgrimages to historic shrines and holy sites where saints defended the faith and miracles happened. Deepen your understanding of the Eucharist through our multimedia resources on Eucharistic miracles and church teaching. Join our prayer community united in spirit with the Augustinian nuns of Montefalco and Catholics around the globe. Discover the lives of more saints, learn how their stories intersect with our own and how they intercede for us today. Saint John Damascene Collection. Shop faith-filled gifts and resources in our online store, each purchase supporting our evangelization mission. Be part of a spiritual family united in one heart, one mind, one spirit with one vision. Visit Journeys of Faith and let your soul encounter the living witness of the saints. Service at the Caliph's Court, an awakening of faith. Amid the shifting sands of religious conflict and imperial ambition in the early 8th century, Saint John Damascene's life took an unexpected turn. Born into a prominent Christian family in Damascus during the height of Islamic rule, John grew up amid both privilege and peril. His father, a trusted financial officer in the court of Caliph Abd al-Malik, ensured that his son received the finest education available, steeped equally in Hellenistic philosophy and Christian tradition. When John inherited his father's position, he found himself serving in the very heart of the caliph's administration. Yet it was here among scholars of many tongues and faiths that the seeds of his profound spiritual mission were sown. Surrounded by the challenges posed to Christianity by Islam's rapid spread and the growing controversy over icons erupting in the Byzantine Empire, John's heart gravitated ever more toward defending the Church's ancient truths. Through prayer, study, and constant dialogue with divine mystery, John discerned a call far greater than political service, a call to champion the incarnational reality of Christ and the enduring tradition of sacred images. In the very midst of a Muslim-ruled society, his faith found fertile ground, transforming anxiety over religious identity into a resolute witness. With clarity and courage, he began writing treatises and hymns that gave voice to the church's worship, helping a generation cling to the tangible realities of the faith, the flesh of Christ, the mystery of the Eucharist, the veneration of images that draw the soul heavenward. It was at the crossroads of empire and the sanctuary of his soul that John Damascene became more than a court official. He emerged as a theologian ablaze with conviction, awakening the faithful to the splendor of incarnational worship and the power of the saints as spiritual allies in a divided world. Monastic conversion at Mar Saba. In the windswept desert cliffs above the Kidron Valley, Saint John Damascene found his true spiritual home. After facing opposition in the political and religious turmoil of Damascus, he sought refuge in the timeless silence of Mar Saba, one of the oldest continuously inhabited monasteries in the Christian world. The monastery, founded in the 5th century by Saint Sabas, had long stood as a beacon for those yearning for a deeper encounter with God. Its fortress-like walls safeguarding the sacred flame of Eastern monasticism. Here, John's life underwent a profound transformation. Surrounded by the chanting of psalms and the strict asceticism of his brothers in faith, he shed the trappings of status and entered a daily rhythm of prayer, study, and contemplation. The desert was both promise and proving ground, a place where every comfort fell away and only love of Christ remained. It was at Mar Saba that John began to answer more radically the Lord's invitation to take up your cross and follow me, finding unexpected freedom in obedience and humility. Within the monastery's shadowed halls, John's mind and heart were set ablaze for the mysteries of the Incarnation. His study of Scripture and the writings of the early church fathers deepened. He could meditate in uninterrupted silence on the awe-inspiring truth that the God of the universe became flesh, an idea that would come to define his theological works and his courageous defense of icons. Every fresco and icon shimmering with candlelight in the Marsaba chapel fed his devotion, planting the seeds for a lifetime of spiritual battle in defense of the visible signs of God's grace. St. John's conversion at Marsaba reminds us that monastic discipline is not about withdrawal for its own sake, but about forging a soul strong and supple enough to love without reserve. In this desert cloister, wrestling with doubts and temptations, he found the resolve to become a herald of Christ's tangible presence in our world. And through this, his witness continues to inspire all who long to encounter the living God in faith and sacrament. The first iconoclast crisis and John's response. The 8th century in Christendom was a time of turbulence and division, not just politically, but spiritually and artistically. The Byzantine Empire had erupted in controversy over the veneration of icons, sacred images of Christ, the Virgin Mary, and the saints that had been integral to Christian worship and devotion for centuries. With the ascension of Emperor Leo III, a campaign began to systematically destroy these holy images, a movement now known as the iconoclast crisis. For many believers, this was not just a matter of art or imperial policy, it was a spiritual crisis that struck at the heart of incarnational faith. The denial of icons seemed to undermine the very mystery of the Incarnation, God made visible in Jesus Christ, the Word made flesh, present among us. Amid this storm, a solitary and courageous monk emerged from the deserts near Damascus, Saint John Damascene. Though his homeland was under Muslim rule and beyond imperial reach, John wielded his pen with prophetic vigor. He wrote passionately, marshaling scripture, patristic wisdom, and sound theology to defend the veneration of icons as a witness to the truth that God has entered human history in tangible, visible form. John argued that to honor the image was not to worship wood and paint, but to honor the prototype, Christ himself, who took on flesh for our salvation. With clarity and conviction, he wrote, "When the invisible one becomes visible to flesh, you may then depict the likeness of his form. When he who is bodiless and without form, unconfined by the limitation of form, becomes subject to form, for your sake you may then depict him on canvas and show it for contemplation." Through this, he inspired the faithful to hold fast to the images that connected them to heavenly realities, setting the stage for the eventual restoration of sacred art and Christian worship. His defense was not only intellectual, but deeply pastoral, an act of solidarity with every Christian longing to see and touch the visible reminders of God's love breaking into our world. Saint John Damascene stood as a bulwark, reminding the church that to behold the holy icons is to be drawn, heart and soul, into the mystery of the Incarnation, where heaven and earth meet. 3 apologies for holy images explained. Saint John Damascene lived at the crossroads of tumult and transformation. The Byzantine emperor had decreed the destruction of holy images, icons, as idolatrous, but John, drawing from centuries of Christian tradition and his own profound theological insight, crafted a triple-fold apology or defense for sacred images that would echo throughout the ages. First apology, the mystery of the Incarnation. John's first and most stirring argument hinged on the Incarnation itself, the Word made flesh. In former times, he wrote, God without body or form could never be depicted, but in Jesus Christ, the invisible God became visible, tangible, and approachable. To depict Christ in icons, John taught, is not to create an idol, but to proclaim the reality of God walking among us, fully human and fully divine. The holy image is a confession of faith rooted in the mystery of the Incarnation, a bridge between heaven and earth. Second apology, honoring the prototype. St. John went deeper, distinguishing sharply between worship due to God alone and veneration offered to the saints and their images. He compared icons to royal portraits. No one confuses the image of the king for the king himself, yet the portrait still demands respect because of the person it represents. Venerating an icon, John argued, honors the prototype behind it, Christ, his mother, or his saints, and thus deepens our reverence for their holiness. Third apology, the power of tradition and evangelization. Finally, John emphasized the continuity of Christian tradition. From the earliest centuries, believers adorned catacombs and churches with sacred art. For John, this was not accidental, but providential, a means to instruct the faithful, inspire devotion, and attract hearts to the mysteries of faith. Images teach wordlessly, carrying the gospel into eyes and hearts before a single catechetical word is spoken. In defending icons, John was defending the church's mission to evangelize through beauty, form, and embodied faith. Through these three apologies, Saint John Damascene did not merely save images, he illuminated their essential role in the church's incarnational worship, echoing the heartbeat of a faith that sees God not as distant, but intimately present and gloriously visible in our midst. Incarnational theology at the heart of his thought. For Saint John Damascene, the Incarnation, God becoming man in the person of Jesus Christ, was the crux of Christian faith and worship. This profound mystery shaped every facet of his theology and underpinned his unshakable defense of icons within the church. He understood that the Incarnation was not a distant event, but a living, dynamic reality, bridging heaven and earth, the invisible and the visible. Because Christ assumed a true human body, the material world was suffused with the possibility of becoming a vehicle for divine grace. In his writings and homilies, St. John passionately argued that it was precisely because of the Incarnation that Christians could depict Christ, the Theotokos, and the saints in sacred art. To honor these holy images was not idolatry, but a recognition of the tangible ways in which God sanctifies creation and dwells among his people. I venerate matter, he famously declared, through which my salvation came to me. Far from diminishing divine majesty, this affirmation revealed a deeply Catholic worldview, one in which matter is redeemed, not rejected. St. John's incarnational theology invited believers to experience God not just through abstract contemplation, but through real encounters in icons and the beauty of worship, above all in the Holy Eucharist. Just as the bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ, so the humble materials of wood and pigment could mediate heavenly realities. His fearless championing of holy images was ultimately a defense of God's nearness and accessibility, an invitation to behold divine love made visible in the world we see, touch, and share together. Hymnographer of the great feast. In the tapestry of Eastern Christian tradition, few figures loom as large as Saint John Damascene, the inspired hymnographer whose poetic genius still resounds in the liturgies of today. At a time when the church defended the sacredness of holy images, it was also in her hymnals and chants that she gave voice to ineffable mysteries. St. John, guided by fervor for the truth and beauty of the Incarnation, became the renowned author of the canons sung in the matins of the great feasts, Pascha, Easter, Christmas, the Ascension, and the Transfiguration. St. John's hymns do more than recount gospel events. They immerse the faithful in the profound reality of what God has accomplished. His Paschal canon, the day of resurrection, let us be radiant, O peoples, invites believers to cast off sorrow and rise into the dazzling joy of Christ's victory. His Christmas hymns tenderly channel the awe of the shepherds and angels who beheld the Word become flesh, drawing worshipers into that holy night in Bethlehem. Each phrase penned by St. John unfolds like a theological icon, beautiful, precise, and overflowing with love for the incarnate Lord. The words are not mere verses, but living prayers that lead hearts from earth to heaven. When the church sings his hymns, she proclaims anew the wonders of the faith, that Christ, once hidden in the mystery of God, is revealed to us, visible, tangible, glorified in our midst. Saint John's legacy as the Chrysostom of the East is most vivid in the melodies that accompany pilgrim souls through the cycle of the liturgical year. Generations have treasured his poetic theology, finding in his hymns both doctrinal clarity and spiritual consolation. By intertwining beauty and doctrine, Saint John Damascene offers the faithful not only a defense of icons, but a radiant lens through which to behold and proclaim the Incarnation in song. The fount of wisdom, structure, and themes. At the heart of Saint John Damascene's theological legacy stands his magnum opus, The Fount of Wisdom. Written during a turbulent age for the Church, this work is both meticulously structured and richly layered, guiding believers deep into the embrace of right doctrine, especially regarding Christ, the saints, and the sacraments. The treatise unfolds in three parts, each one a stepping stone for the soul, striving towards spiritual understanding. The first section, a philosophical outline, synthesizes ancient Greek thought with the truths of Christian revelation. Drawing from Aristotle and the Church Fathers, St. John crafts a Christian worldview anchored in reason and faith, a rare harmony amid polemics. The second section, On Heresies, tackles the spiritual threats of St. John's time. With the precision of a seasoned apologist, he names, describes, and critiques every known heresy, but saves his boldest rebuttals for the iconoclasts, those who would strip churches of sacred images and deny the mystery of the Incarnation. For John, icons are not idols, but windows through which Christ and the saints touch our world, drawing hearts into prayerful awe. Finally, an exact exposition of the Orthodox faith, the third and most renowned part, glows as a catechetical treasure. Here, John distills centuries of Christian doctrine into clear, accessible teaching. His themes are unmistakably incarnational. The eternal Word became flesh, sanctifying not just souls, but bodies, matter, and creation itself. He celebrates the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, the intercessory power of the saints, and the profound dignity of every Christian called into communion with God. St. John Damascene's fount of wisdom does not merely inform, it beckons the faithful to encounter Christ personally, to cherish the faith received, and to bear its radiance into a world yearning for truth. The structure serves as scaffolding, while the themes, incarnation, communion, and redemption, remain ever flowing like a springtime river, nourishing the whole church. Influence on later Byzantine and Latin fathers. Saint John Damascene's struggle and triumph during the iconoclastic controversy would reverberate through the ages, shaping the heart of Christian doctrine for generations. His defense of holy images, grounded in the Incarnation, God taking on flesh in Jesus, opened spiritual pathways for both East and West. For the Byzantine fathers, he became a guiding star. The Second Council of Nicaea in 787 echoed his theology nearly verbatim, formally affirming the veneration of icons and recognizing that to honor the image is to honor the prototype, the one depicted. In the Latin West, John Damascene's theological legacy crossed cultural and linguistic boundaries. Early medieval theologians such as Peter Lombard and later Thomas Aquinas relied on his teachings, integrating Damascene's understanding of the sacraments, the saints, and the mystery of the Incarnation into scholastic thought. His seminal work, The Exposition of the Orthodox Faith, became a foundational textbook referenced by popes and councils alike to clarify the faith handed down from the apostles. Even centuries later, as the devotional life of the church flourished, most especially in Marian and Eucharistic devotion, his arguments provided a bedrock for understanding the role of sacred signs and symbols. By defending icons, St. John Damascene defended the very principle that God meets humanity not just in word, but in sign, flesh, and sacrament, a truth that animates Catholic worship to this very day. Condemnation by the emperor, vindication by the church. Saint John Damascene's courageous defense of holy icons placed him squarely in the crosshairs of both earthly and spiritual conflict. During the 8th century, the church was shaken by the iconoclast controversy, a crisis ignited when Byzantine Emperor Leo III outlawed the veneration of religious images. The imperial decree reached far and wide, forcing many into silence. But in a Damascus monastery, John's voice rang out boldly for truth. He wielded his pen as a weapon of faith, authoring 3 powerful treatises against those who decry holy images. With unmatched clarity, he explained that Christian icons did not lead to idolatry, but to deeper worship of the incarnate Christ. For John, refusing to depict Jesus in sacred art was a denial of his real humanity, a direct assault on the central truth of the Incarnation and the miracle of the Eucharist. His unwavering stance drew fierce retribution. Despite living under Muslim rule and technically out of the emperor's direct reach, slander was delivered to Caliph al-Walid, John's political leader. He was accused of treason, publicly humiliated, and dismissed from his official position. Yet John accepted suffering with Christ-like patience, dedicating his life to prayer, study, and hymn writing in the monastery of St. Saba. Amidst the political whirlwind, the wisdom of the church began to shine through. Bishops and theologians, some at great personal risk, supported John's teaching on images and incarnational worship. Centuries later, the church would officially vindicate him at the Second Council of Nicaea in 787, reaffirming the honor given to icons as vessels of grace and channels to the mystery of God made man. St. John's story is a radiant call for every believer. When fidelity to Christ is condemned by the world, it is ultimately embraced and vindicated by the church, echoing the witness of the saints through every age. Conclusion: the everlasting legacy of Saint John Damascene. Saint John Damascene stands as a radiant beacon across the centuries, a champion who defended not only the sacred beauty of icons, but the very heart of our incarnational faith. His unwavering conviction in the power of images to lift our souls to God invites us to cherish our Catholic spiritual heritage and to honor the mysteries of the Incarnation with awe and gratitude. Through his courageous witness, St. John teaches us that our faith is not abstract, but lived, encountered, and celebrated in the visible world, especially in the Eucharist, those tangible signs in which heaven kisses earth. At Journeys of Faith, we echo the mission that animated St. John Damascene's life: to deepen love for Christ and his church and to fan the flames of Eucharistic devotion and Marian piety. His example urges us onward as pilgrims, seeking the face of God through sacred tradition, living icons, and the communion of saints. May his legacy inspire us to defend and cherish all that makes our faith living and true, united in one heart, one mind, one spirit, with one vision. Let us continue the journey ever deeper, ever higher toward the fullness of life in Christ. Browse our Saint John Damascene collection. Be sure to click the link in the description for special news item. And since there is more to this article, finish reading and check out the special offer. Visit journeysoffaith.com website today.
It's your journey.